The day I filled my trash can with concrete and watched our HOA president try to kick it over was the most satisfying moment of my life. The sound her sneaker made when it hit that 320-pound block of justice still plays in my head sometimes like a drumbeat, announcing the end of 6 miserable months. I just stood behind my kitchen window, sipping coffee, watching her clutch her foot and yelp like she'd been shot. For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt solid. My name's Mark Rivers. 3 years ago, I bought a small ranch house in Pinecrest Meadows, a postcard-perfect suburb with manicured lawns and neighbors who wave too long. My wife Emily had just passed after a brutal fight with pancreatic cancer. The bills ate through everything we'd saved, but I wanted a quiet place where my daughter Chloe could finish high school without hearing debt collectors on the phone. Pinecrest Meadows looked safe, predictable, exactly what grief needs to survive. And for a while it was peaceful. Morning coffee on the porch, cardinals in the trees, the smell of pine needles instead of disinfectant. Then I met Deborah Thornton, HOA president and self-appointed goddess of suburban order. Picture the kind of woman who color-codes her recycling bins and threatens lawsuits over lawn height. Blonde helmet hair, pink tracksuit, Lexus so white it blinded you in sunlight. She strutted around like a mall cop with divine authority. The first time I noticed the trash problem, I thought it was a raccoon. My bin was on its side, garbage everywhere, tire marks on the bag of leftovers. The second week, same thing. By the third, I started watching patterns. Every Tuesday at exactly 6:47 a.m., Deborah power-walked past my driveway, and every Tuesday my trash can somehow ended up face down in the street. So I set up a Ring camera. 20 minutes of installation, one night of waiting, and boom, caught in 1080p. There she was, glancing both ways like a cartoon burglar, then hip-checking my bin with Olympic precision. I actually laughed out loud when I saw it. Finally, proof. 3 days later, I got a letter from the HOA. Violation unapproved surveillance device creating hostile atmosphere. Signed, of course, by Deborah Thornton. Remove immediately or face escalating fines. That's when I realized she knew she'd been caught and she was doubling down. I ignored her thinking logic would win. It didn't. The next morning she was out there with a clipboard measuring my grass. 3.2 inches. Limit 3. She photographed my daughter's parked car, called City Code Enforcement about a supposed illegal outlet for Christmas lights, even timed how long those lights stayed up after New Year's. Every letter she sent felt like a bullet point in a war I hadn't agreed to fight. One night, sitting under the single porch light, I just broke. The bills from Emily's hospital were still stacked on my desk, my business was slow, and now this woman was threatening to fine me out of my home. I remember staring at those letters, wondering if I'd somehow invited this, if being a widower with a beat-up truck made me look like someone who didn't belong here. I thought about packing up, selling the house, letting her win. But then Chloe walked in holding 2 cups of cocoa and said, "Dad, why do we let people like her push us around?" That was the moment the switch flipped. If Deborah wanted a game of control, I'd play it better. I started digging. County records, HOA bylaws, public filings. It turned out Deborah had never filed the required treasurer reports 3 years in a row. Technically, our HOA wasn't even legally active. And the best part, she'd paid her own real estate company $15,000 in consulting fees from the HOA fund. While I built my case, I kept pretending to lose. Took down one camera, ignored her notices, acted beaten, let her think she'd broken me. That's when she got bold. She hit the neighborhood with new rules. Dues jumped to $220 retroactive application fees for modifications like my doorbell camera. She even filed a lien against my house for unpaid fines, threatening foreclosure if I didn't pay $2,347. That's when I met Gladys Kowalski. 74, retired teacher, eyes like steel under silver hair. She'd lived here since the beginning and seen Deborah run off 6 families. Over tea that smelled like lavender and dust, she whispered, "She preys on anyone struggling. She thinks people with debt lower property values." Gladys handed me a cardboard box she'd bought at an estate sale, Deborah's late husband's old files. Inside were original HOA documents proving she'd never been legally appointed president. She'd simply taken the title after the last guy died. Every rule, every fine, every lien completely void. We formed a quiet alliance, me, Gladys, and Jennifer Martin, a paralegal who loved drama more than television. Together we documented everything: fines, fake invoices, proof of embezzlement. Meanwhile, I planned something poetic. It started as a joke on a job site. A concrete worker laughed. "You want people to stop kicking your trash can? Fill it with concrete." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I went home, bought 6 bags of Quickset, and spent the night mixing 320 pounds of pure poetic justice in my garage. Monday night, crisp. October air smell of wet cement and motor oil. I poured it into the bin, let it cure overnight. From the street it looked normal. Same black plastic shell, same lid. Inside, immovable truth. Tuesday morning, 6:47 a.m. She appeared, pink tracksuit, earbuds, smug smile. I held my coffee, heart pounding like I'd wired the whole thing to explode. She reached my driveway, glanced around, and swung her foot. Thud. The sound echoed like a shotgun. She screamed, grabbed her ankle, stumbled back. I almost laughed, but I didn't need to. She'd already made herself a spectacle. Neighbors peeked out their windows. And then, because karma has a sense of humor, she came back 20 minutes later with a crowbar. Right there in broad daylight, Deborah Thornton began attacking my trash can like it owed her money. The clangs rang through the whole cul-de-sac. Kids waiting for the bus stared. Someone yelled, "Is she okay?" Mrs. Patterson across the street called the cops. When Officer Martinez showed up, Deborah was red-faced and sweating, surrounded by concrete dust. "Ma'am, step away from the property," he said. "He booby-trapped the right-of-way," she screamed. I stepped outside, laptop in hand. "Officer, here's 47 videos of her destroying my trash can over 6 months. I just made it harder to knock over." He watched 3 clips and shut his notebook. "You might want to file counter charges for vandalism." That police report became the thread that unraveled everything. Deborah hired a lawyer, some slick guy named Bradley Wainwright, who tried to sue me for emotional distress and weaponizing construction materials. But her own videos, stolen from my Ring feed, got tossed out as illegal evidence. Then Jennifer dropped the bomb, a full financial audit showing $47,000 stolen from HOA funds, falsified liens, and fake board authority. By the time we reached court, the story had gone viral. The video of her kicking my concrete can hit local news with headlines like, "When Karen Meets Physics." Half the neighborhood showed up wearing pink tracksuits in solidarity. Inside the courtroom smelled like stale coffee and drama. Judge Morrison looked exhausted before we even started. Wainwright strutted up and painted me as a mentally unstable electrician engaging in psychological warfare against a community volunteer. Then he made the fatal mistake of playing footage Deborah had hacked from my Ring account. "Where did your client obtain this?" the judge asked. Silence. Then Jennifer stood calm as a surgeon and requested permission to present context. The judge nodded. We rolled the tapes. 47 separate clips, every hip check, every smug grin, every petty violation. The crowd gasped when we got to the crowbar scene. And then came the financials, forged documents, missing treasurer reports, bank transfers, straight into Deborah's real estate account. The judge just shook his head. That's when Deborah snapped. She jumped to her feet, voice cracking. "This is ridiculous. People like him don't belong here. His wife's medical bills are public record." The courtroom went silent. Even her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Judge Morrison slammed his gavel. "Mrs. Thornton, sit down before I hold you in contempt." But she kept yelling about property values, about undesirable residents, about her right to protect the neighborhood from people who couldn't afford to maintain standards. Every word was a shovel digging her own grave. When she finally stopped, I stood and said quietly, "Your Honor, she kicked over my trash can 47 times. I made it impossible to knock over. Everything else she did, that's on her." The judge dismissed her case on the spot, ordered restitution for property damage, and referred the embezzlement evidence to the state attorney general. Deborah Thornton walked out pale and trembling, surrounded by news cameras shouting questions she couldn't answer. That was the last time she ever set foot in Pinecrest Meadows. As the gavel fell, I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just exhaled. The sound was soft, like concrete settling. Sometimes standing your ground doesn't mean fighting harder. It means becoming unmovable.